Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. I support women to bloom in midlife with creativity and spiritual life coaching. I'm your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before this week's episode with Elizabeth Des Roches, I would like to invite you to download my midlife meditation. This is created to remind you that your life is a precious gift, and midlife is a milestone that's worth celebrating as it's marking the start of an exciting new era in your life. Also, tune into Her Inspirations, which is the sister podcast to this title. In each solo episode, I aim to inspire midlife women to recognize and embrace the wisdom of their experience and allow this next season of their life to be the most free and fruitful. Midlife is your time to bloom. All the links are in the show notes below. My guest this week is Elizabeth Des Roches. She mentors creative spiritual women as they explore their real powers, discover what they truly want to experience in this life, and share their brilliant work with the world. She also shares her writings and podcasts on Substack at the Creatrix Experience. During our conversation, Elizabeth shares how changing countries changed her work and life, and also why this is the time for highly conscious women to expand beyond the lives they've been leading. So as always, I begin by asking my guest. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
Lately, a lot of the time, actually. Certainly when I wake up in the morning, when I'm just coming back into this waking reality, I can feel myself almost coming down a few octaves. When I work with clients, when I'm doing trance work, and definitely when I'm doing creative work, whether it's writing or images or whatever, when I'm in deep flow, I feel higher energetic resonance for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. And before we get into our conversation, please share a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and your story.
I've been doing this work my whole life. I just didn't realize I was until probably 5 years ago, because what I do is I work with women and show them ways to work with their energy so that they can create the things that they know they're here to create, and so that they can share them with others. So right now I do mentoring. I do a lot of mentoring. I also have some groups, and my current pet project is my Substack, which I started that Substack on a whim a few years ago, and suddenly something shifted in last year, and I started actually focusing on it and posting to it regularly. And about 3 months ago, I started a podcast on it. Literally one day I was just sitting on my computer and I said, that's it, I'm starting the podcast, which has turned out to be a lot of fun. So I'm really enjoying it. So I'm Canadian, but I live in France. I'm sitting in the attic of my house in a very, very small village, just off near the northwestern coast of France. And my husband and 2 of my 5 children, we've been here since 2010. So this is where they've grown up, and certainly in some ways where I've grown up, because a lot of my evolution has happened here.
And what prompted you to move to France?
Well, again, these things, I was doing these things, but when I was doing them, I really didn't understand. But now I can see what I was doing then. Is I could see our lives in Canada were good, but we were running a lot, trying to do so many things simultaneously. Both of my children are highly, highly sensitive. They have talk about high energetic resonance. And it was overwhelming for them to be in Toronto. So I got this idea, and we might move out into the country. And then I thought, well, why not do it in another country? So I started looking online, and I found this house, and we came over, and yeah, we bought it, and we've been here ever since. And it really has changed all of our lives.
Do you have a connection to France at all? I know there's a connection with French friends in Canada, but is that why were looking in France, or of all the places in the world?
I know, it's funny. Well, my initial thought was England. And what I discovered when I was just searching the real estate sites, and I was just looking for the building that spoke to me. And there were some in England. There were a couple of cloisters, some gorgeous, gorgeous houses. But my husband put his foot down when I was showing him things that had no roof. He said, no, if we're buying a house, we have to be able to live in it right away. I said, okay, fine. And so somewhere along the line, I started looking on the French websites, and I was just amazed. The French really aren't that interested in restoring old buildings. So where I had only a few choices when I was looking in England, here it was just like thousands and thousands of options. And also I have my family originally came from France. Like, they were some of the first people to go to Canada from France. So that's a good 500 years ago. And also I have past lives, many, many, many past lives from this country.
Right. So tell me about making that move, and then what that sparked within you, and how you changed as a result of that relocation. Because I think sometimes we don't realize that sometimes just a relocation, whether it's within a country or into a different country altogether, can actually bring out a different aspect of ourselves that we can't do when we stay in the same place.
Absolutely. Moving any move, of course, you suddenly have new habits, like you have a new environment, you get to know new people, and so forth. And that was huge because, of course, I had university level French. My husband had none. So we had the whole language thing, which was interesting in itself. But the way people live here is different. Like, it is very interesting to see how North American mindsets, and I think probably even British, the things that are just normal to us, the French don't even think of these things. So there was a whole learning of, for example, everything closes between 12 and 2 because that's lunchtime. And we would roll up somewhere at 1 o'clock and we're like, why is this place closed? Months we would do that. And then finally we got used to, you had your morning, you had your evening, and they don't open late at night. Unlike in Canada and Toronto, I could do my groceries at 2 in the morning if I wanted to. They don't really work on Sunday. So that changed how we function, because suddenly, instead of running on Toronto time, we sort of dialed it down to small village in France time.
And yeah, it's interesting that going into a different country, but that siesta that really makes a difference as well. So do you actually take that time to actually make it downtime now? I suppose you have no choice, really. If everyone else is sleeping, then you may as well kind of get into that.
Here it's not so much a siesta, unlike in Spain or somewhere. It's more, people will literally get in their car at work and drive home and have an entire lunch and then get back in the car and drive all the way back to work. For us, we still hold a lot of Canadian ideas about, like, taking a 2-hour lunch in Canada would border on being lazy. So more for us, it would be our days are a little bit shorter. And certainly for me, as I formed more and more of my current version of my business, I cut my work week way smaller. So I only work Tuesday to Thursday. And I don't know if I would have done that if I was still in Canada, because everybody else would be calling me on Monday and Friday and Saturday even. And here I was like, no, this is how it works.
Mm. It's great to have that pace around you as well, because if you feel like everyone's doing and you're just doing, Tuesday to Thursday, there's always this part, especially if you've grown up in this like first world mindset, that it should be 5 days a week and the weekends are off and everything like that. And even I still find myself having those kind of leanings even when I'm working on my own. I've not worked for anyone. I've not had to check in with anyone Monday to Friday for many years, but I still maintain a level of that schedule, even though actually I tend to now do more work at the weekends and actually have more space in the week, which means that I can go and do things that will be busy and overrun as well over the weekends as well. So, but there can be some times during the week where I have to keep reminding myself that it's okay. It's okay. Like, you always get stuff done. It always works. It doesn't matter. And it's interesting how we internalize this kind of clock, this schedule that we should be getting up at this time, working until that time, and anything outside of that is unproductive. But the idea, and especially to talk about when we're talking about creating, and we want to delve into that, how important it is to manage the amount of output that you're doing and not overextend yourself because the production disappears, that you're not able to show up as well. I mean, how does that factor in for the work and the quality of the work that you can do?
Well, one of the things, and I grew into this slowly because I did have the 7-day-a-week mindset when I got here. But now I really look at my energy, and I don't mean energy is like, do I feel energetic or not? I mean, am I feeling like I can be in this state of flow right now or not? So sometimes my day doesn't, like my quote productive part of the day doesn't start till 5 o'clock, because that's when I suddenly feel like, okay, the things around me are swirling. I can get into that creative flow. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm writing for an hour and a half because it's just coming through. So I watch my energetics. I tune into my energetics more so than the clock or the calendar. And people who work with me, I mean, yes, of course, if I have a client call, I show up at the time on the date that I said I would. But around that, people know that, for example, on my Substack, I might post on a Monday, and the next time it might be a Thursday. And it's fine, because this is creativity. You think about like the greatest creatives on the planet in history, they weren't creating to a schedule. So they were listening, they were tuning in to when that was rising in them, that creative impulse.
Can you talk more about the work that you do?
In what respect? Just in general?
Okay. Yeah, in general, and what it is that you're creating, and we'll expand from there.
So I've always been a creative. I mean, I was the kid who was drawing and cutting and sewing and everything, and went through my whole life sort of having creativity on one side and the productive stuff on the other side. And then somewhere about 30 years ago, the spiritual stuff started showing up, and I was keeping them quite separate. And now what I do is I show women how to weave them together so that your spirituality is part of your work and your creativity is part of your life, and everything it works together. So, for example, I have a young client who very driven, very productive, and she had the checklists and everything. And it was about maybe a month into our working together. One day she said to me, I don't know, I feel creative. I'm like, you've always been creative. I mean, look at all the stuff you were doing. She said, no, this is different. And what it is that some of the these old thought patterns, old habitual ways of being had started to dissolve. And she had realized that how little she was placing importance on creativity. Because, I mean, in society as a whole, creativity is sort of denigrated unless you happen to be the top 1% who's creating the blockbuster movie or something. So what I'm doing is showing women that, first of all, you are creative. It's not like you're never creative. You always are. But what have you overlaid over that creativity in terms of a lot of like busy work, things you think you're supposed to do. And then like with this client in particular, she was putting her creativity at the end of the day, after all the client work, after all taking care, she has animals. And she said, I kept saying, put it first. Oh, I don't think I can. I'm like, put your creative, give yourself, even if you have to time block it, give yourself a time block of creativity first, then go off and do things for other people. And when she made that switch, suddenly everything started opening up. And when you do that, when you put yourself first, and this is another thing I do a lot, is I like to show women how to be self-centered. And it's not selfish, it means centered on yourself. And once you start realizing that your energy comes from within you, like this is what, source is within you, then you start radiating out and everything starts to just fall into place because you're not looking out there for whether it's a timeline or some sort of external validation. Or so I do a lot of mindset's not my favorite word. We shift their energetics. And then like I like to say I do 80% energy and 20% business. So running a business is really easy when your energetics are harmonious. As I say, you can make a business plan on the back of a serviette in 30 minutes. No, 3 minutes, if everything else is functioning well.
And why do you feel it's important? I've got my own thoughts as well, but why do you think this shift is necessary for us to work from this kind of energy and see things as that connection, that creativity and spirituality, which I'm there 100% with you. I like my life is testament to it. I don't need anyone to kind of give me a book or peer review it or anything like that. It's just absolutely there as well. I'd love to hear your perspective.
So I'm actually quite far into the midst of creating a new philosophy. I call it sovereign creativity. And as I'm playing with it on my own and with my clients, what's my basic idea here is that creativity, of course, is life force energy, is source, is whatever you want to call it. And the more that you can tune into it at a high frequency, the more pure the work that you end up doing. So for example, if you tune into a high frequency idea, for example, and manage to keep that high frequency as you draw that idea down into reality, whether you're writing or making something or even speaking, it's more potent. And so today, I know a lot of people have different viewpoints of what's going on the planet. But what I see is that it's time for us to go back to this creativity, pure, direct, instead of doing setting so many like little mazes for ourselves before we get to work with energy, like just direct. And so this way we're getting ideas that are immediately functional and broad ranging, and the ripples are going out and helping other people beyond our knowledge. I don't know who's been touched by my work, and frankly, I'm glad they have, but I don't care how many, And this is different than before when many people still are counting, are trying to prove things, are trying to box things up all neatly. You can't box creativity up.
Yeah. I think that idea of, the counting of things, the measuring of things, comes from the way that the conditioning that we go through. And it takes time to sit outside of that and then believe that anything else can be possible, and also to be a gauge for our own worth, you know, and just say, is this working? Is this coming from a place, or do I need X amount of people to kind of feed back to me to tell me that it's okay? I mean, it's always lovely when people feed back to you and say, you know, what you did there was really worthwhile to me, and it helped me, or it gave me a possibility. Or even if someone says, you know what, I just absolutely did not agree with you. I think sometimes just that having creating a response from somebody, whether they agree with you or disagree, I think is valid in itself. So because of so much of us, it shows our authenticity, I feel, because if you can go out there and say something that someone goes, no way, like strongly no way, then you've created something that's kind of awakening them. Because there's so many reasons why, you know, the awakening of the world right now is people are coming out of the slumber of just going along to get along, and this apathetic just yes, and this yes and agreement, and also this fear of being seen as having an opinion against what we've been told. But I think really now where we're getting to on pretty much every aspect of society, you know, whatever corner you want to look at, is because we've just gone along with things, that we've kind of got to the point where it's just so uncomfortable, like, and it kind of expresses itself in different ways for different people. There's this feeling of like something else should be happening, or there's this like underlying like anxiety that you can't put your finger on, because you're always trying to jump through hoops for the hoops moving, and you don't know where it's moving, you know, and the way to ease out of any of that is to go, well, what do you think, you know, and allow what you think to be enough, and then let people react or respond, you know, depending on how they're able to handle how they deal with opposing views, as let it be that. Because I think we need to find out who we individually are, and sometimes that means that we're bumping heads and we're screaming and crying and reacting, but it's a necessary thing to recalibrate to our own individual resonance, as it were, really, and then put it out, and then find out who responds to you, and also let it be that, you know, maybe someone only responds to 30% of what you say, and let that be enough, as opposed to wanting to kind of keep everyone in these boxes and be like 100% here, and if you don't, then, you know, you're against me, or you're cancelled, or, you know, this kind of immaturity that just has, you know, it's a very childish point of view. And if someone doesn't agree with you, then you're calling them all the names. It's like, when did we last do that? We were 6. That's the way that we dealt with things we didn't like or things we didn't agree with. And it feels sticky and it feels messy right now, but let it be that, because like at the heart of who and what we want will find its level. And so many different spiritual practices or belief systems are speaking about this right now. So what we're going through had to happen. And we're just right in the middle of it. And maybe even to see the fact that we are in the middle of it, witnessing all the mess and all the chaos, is actually a beautiful thing, because there are many people that will just hear about this as a footnote in history and be like, well, I wonder what that was like. Like, well, let me tell you, I lived through it, you know, and saw it all break down. Yeah.
Well, I've actually heard it said, and I agree, we are actually experiencing a renaissance. And 500 years from now, they will be looking back and saying, what was going on? Like, we have so many things that are happening that have never happened in history before. For example, women are living so long. We are the first generation who will live 20, 30, 40 years after finishing raising a family. That has never happened. And there are not very many people out there, women out there, to look to as models. We're the ones who are pioneering this longer life of actual creativity and being in good health and so forth. So that's one thing that's going on. The other thing, what you were saying about people not liking what you have to say, when I look at it in terms of resonance and energy, if I'm saying something that is a very high vibrational, holds a very high vibration, a thought that's really, really quite potent and pure, if someone is an outright no, what that shows me is they're really close.
Mm.
The people who totally don't even hear me or notice me are vibrationally so far. I mean, they might as well be on another planet. And so if somebody actually comes back to me, which it's very rare, but if someone comes back to me and says, like, for example, I'll say, everything is perfect. I've had people say, are you kidding? No way. And what I see from that is that they're close enough that they even heard me say it vibrationally. So that means conversation can happen. And I welcome that, because also when someone asks me a question, and you know, it's always nicer if it's not confrontational, but if somebody comes back, it gives me the opportunity to play with it more, to go deeper, to look at the subtleties, and even ask, like I was speaking to someone and she said, oh, I had this weekend and I could feel negative energy around me. And I'm like, okay, that's a pretty broad term. What exactly were you experiencing? And then when you learn these, this is something I do with my clients. I have a vibrational scale and I teach them how to discern between, for example, feeling hopeful and feeling inspired. Because we just use these big general buckets, like, oh, I feel good. What does that mean? The more you can refine your perception, the more you can create, and the more rich your life is. So I'm just fascinated with the whole thing, and everything that's going on right now, and I will say, is perfect.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I like the word, I like the idea of perfection, because that kind of that the collapse of one thing to make room and possibility for the new, like the opportunity is here in spades, you know, really.
Absolutely.
If you choose to see it, and it's never, like you say, never in the history of has there ever been this opportunity that I'm aware of. And you know, this awakening with especially the women that I work with who are in midlife,
Yep.
and of my generation, are actually seeing something very different in what midlife means. Like the matriarchal level of my family, who now have, you know, passed, God bless them, lived as well, still the oldest one to 94, and that was with not the best of health.
Yep.
You know, but she made it anyway, and she lasted that long. She was going for 100 and didn't seem out of you know, the most ridiculous thing to even think that she could make it. She was in touching distance of it, literally in touching distance of it. So then I'm looking at it as someone who is now early 50s. So I'm like, if I now, with the information that's available to me, understand how to take care of my body and my mind and my spirit, to actually start to look at ways to undo some of the thought patterns and the beliefs and that would kind of keep me in and you know, hold me in a state that even if I live for 40 years, it would be painful, and it would you know, really cause a disintegration of my own spirit. If I understand all of those things, then what kind of energy, what kind of experience can I bring to the next 40 or 50 years of my life? Because maybe by the time I get to touching 100, the lifespan, the life expectancy will be on top of that, you know, another 20 or 30 years. And for me, that's really exciting, because I think never before have I looked at it going, actually, really kind of make a choice about how long I want to live for, as opposed to get to midlife and go, oh, it's, you know, the final countdown, and kind of expect that one day the hammer's going to fall. You know, one day the hammer will fall, but maybe I have a lot more choice about when that could happen, or how I'm going to experience this next, you know, half a century. Why could it not be that, you know? And waking up every morning going, if I'm going to live for another 50 years, what do I need to do today to make sure that's a real experience for myself, but also it is a beacon of possibility to the generations younger than me that are really struggling at the moment because they're still buying into the idea that they've got, 35 years to get it right and then it's over, which is the biggest lie ever. And I know that I don't want to go back 20 years to relive that, lose 20 years of experience just to have that vitality. So understanding the body, understanding the mind, the heart, the spirit, creativity, to be able to show that there's a different experience for humanity and we can do something really different, that transformative thing. So to be at the forefront of that with all of the other women that are doing that, I feel is super exciting. It's like, we can pave the way here, like why not embrace that? Why not see what it is? It doesn't have to be well, mine's not going to be downhill. I've made the choice, so I can't even speak to that idea. It's just not going to be that, because that's my choice. Yeah,
it's something I find interesting. Again, I find quite often people don't even realize they've internalized these things. And even young women will say things, no, did you hear what you just said? And they stop and so yeah, instead of downhill, I'm looking at that I'm evolving and I'm expanding. And the more that I understand energy, the more I work with my energy, the more I allow the energy to flow in my life as the way it's naturally doing, without putting any artificial restrictions or detours or making things, the better my health. And that happens all the time. I see that all the time. As soon as someone starts shifting just a few little thoughts, the health, because health just means you're whole. So if you just sort of like you were saying before about creativity, and the creativity is a I call it a spiral. I talk a lot about the Creatrix spiral. Only half of it is the creative part. The other half is the dissolution, because things have to come apart so that they can be reconfigured into something else, because this is part of, everything evolves. So when you look at someone's life, yes, we've always had the ability to choose how long we're going to live. It's just people have told us we didn't. And we've always had the opportunity to choose what form of health we want to experience. But, it's not where we're going, but there's a massive industry that would like you to think otherwise. So this is why I keep using the word sovereign. The more that we hold ourselves as the person, the being, the source of our awareness and our energy and our knowledge, and the more we can look at external noises and people and experiences as information that we may or may not choose to participate with, everything just keeps getting better. So when I see someone who's not well, or who is experiencing discomfort, my first question, if they're willing to work with me, because a lot of people kind of enjoy being ill in a weird way, but if they're kind of finished that phase, I'll start with their thoughts, always. Because the thoughts, your body's constantly telling you what's going on. And if something feels like it's not working, there's always a reason. It's always perfect underneath. So your body's never lying to you. And so it's sort of an adjunct to what I do, but I know that you are a singer. I do vocal work with clients, and it's very, very interesting how quickly physical things can shift just by using the sounds of the voice and the resonance in the body.
Yeah. That expression, that I experienced that in the transformation of my own voice when I was I always wanted to be a singer, but there was a lot of I was holding back in terms of my voice for a very long time as well, where I placed it, how I expressed it, whether it was now it's very much rooted in my, in my body, so I can hear it, I can feel it when I speak. But when I first started on the road to find a career and went to the big city and all the things, yes, it was still very much here, you know, so very not even rooted in myself. It was very light. It was very, very ungrounded. And even now, to kind of move it to that place where it used to be, I feel that instant disconnect from here. Like, just like, because I have to, how I did it for so long, I don't know. But when I was able to really find where it sat and allow my own voice to be its own, and, you know, resonant medicine, the vibration of my own voice in itself, one, it was a real shock to me. Once I found the tutor that was able to do that and brought me right back to just feeling, humming, and just getting that resonance, because that in itself was almost, you know, it was almost a shock when I first had those first lessons with her, and she just got me, she wouldn't really let me sing. She was just getting me to tone and getting me to the place where I could just feel it, and I didn't lose that connection. And then once I really started to feel the power of what was available there as well, it's like, oh, this is my voice, this is where it starts. And then build on from there, and just work constantly refining and cleaning, you know. And I listen to my voice like so many hours every day, and when I'm podcasting as well. So I'm probably more overly, from singing and then from speaking, overly critical about my own voice in terms of when it comes to production and clarity and enunciation and all of those things. So then when people listen to my voice and kind of compliment me on my voice, I'm like, yeah, it's been a lifetime of work. I'm spending an enormous amount of time working on my own voice for my own ear, let alone for anyone else, because then I can hear where it's coming from, its authentic place. And many of the times as well, when I speak, or when I work with other women as well, I can hear where they are with the placement of their own voice, you know, where they're choosing to speak from, let alone sing from, and also it highlights to me how we can use the term embodied, I suppose, is the most obvious term, but also how much they are willing to speak from that place of maturity and that womanhood that is more here than is here, you know, and not be the scared little girly anymore. Because if you're able to bring your voice into your body, and I've still got a very young sounding voice, I know that, is people are very surprised that, but I know that I don't sound like a child. I might sound young, but I don't sound like a child because I've pulled it into my body. But that in itself, to be able to speak from that place and feel your body while you're speaking, while you're communicating, I always try and check in with myself, so I'm not just in my head. I can feel my toes, I can feel the center of my body when I'm speaking. So I'm always trying to make sure I'm experiencing my voice on all levels when I'm speaking, so that if I'm feeling it, then I know that it's going out in that way in itself as well. And from that point, when I feel very grounded, then even if I say something that has that instant reaction from somebody else, you know, whether they shut down or whether they come closer with inquiry, I'm able to hold that, you know. I don't get blown over by the no, you know, whereas before I'd be like, oh, you know, and I'd go into myself, whereas now I'd be like, okay, and then can meet them at that point. Yeah, so that's, you know, how working on my voice has given me so many additional things aside from what you hear, is also what I feel within myself, but also what I feel from other people in itself. Yeah.
And working with your voice to I mean, it's an instrument, as we are energetic instruments, but by doing that, it's one of the easiest ways to have a tangible, how do I say this? When you embody your voice like that, and then you speak with authority and you express yourself in this powerful way, your brain goes, oh, that's what it looks like. If you say to someone, express your power, and they're, what? I don't get it. But the brain can hear the difference in the voice, and the body picks up on this resonance. So what you're explaining is exactly the fastest way to have a tangible experience of your personal power. And once you're good at this, for example, if you're in business, now there's none of this issues about visibility, and you express because it's just coming out. And like you said, instead of speaking from your head, you're speaking from your whole body, which is something that, I mean, I hope many, many people learn how to do that, because then they own their energy, then they're sovereign.
Yeah. And especially that, we're being bombarded by frequency left, right, and center. And if you are able to match that frequency or speak with a frequency that, imprints itself on the frequencies that are bombarding you, you kind of stand a chance as well, of being within this soup of energetics and all of the things as well that are surrounding us all the time, so that you don't feel that you're getting being pushed aside by it. And even when you're talking about someone, when they're kind of responding to what you might say negative energy, it's like, oh my God, a negative energy. I think sometimes being overly empathic is, almost like a badge of honor to some extent. It's like, oh, I'm highly sensitive, which is necessary, but there's a balance. As somebody who is a sensitive person, I understand there is a balance, that you want to be sensitive enough to feel, but not so overly sensitive that everything kind of blows you over. It's attuning yourself to that, and so that if somebody comes and is like, oh, negative energy, I'm feeling negative energy, or I'm being overwhelmed by the world, it's like, that could be great, but how can you function if everything's going to blow you over? Yeah.
Well, this is when you have to learn the tools. This is why I talk about energetics, because there are tools. I mean, our brain is one of them, but so is our nervous system. And no one teaches you, very few people teach you how to work with your nervous system. I mean, when you're highly sensitive, you can pick up on thousands % more energy than someone who's blocked it all down. So you don't feel overwhelmed if you have the tools to make these discernments of, what is this energy? Is it right? Like energy can just pass right through you and not affect you at all. And the people that I find who get the most, I have French words in my head, the most overwhelmed are the ones who are trying to hold on to it, or trying to shift that energy in their body. Like if you discern something, or you had an experience where you said, oh, that's a low negative energy, a lot of people will try and use their own energetic system to shift it. You don't have to run it through your body and tax your nervous system. And this is one of the refinements that I'm working with people on, is just because you're capable of perceiving things that are at a lower register doesn't mean you have to run it through your system. You can look, you can say, oh yes, I see that, but you don't have to take it on. And it's very freeing for people who are highly perceptive, because you can choose. And, some people will say, oh, you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. I'm like, no, I'm looking at the world the way I want to. Yes, I know stuff is going on the planet that's, not high vibe, but I don't have to live in that, because what I choose is to live at a higher vibration, so I can pull up those around me, and they can attune to me, and the people around them can attune to them, and everyone is pulled up. It's a subtle thing, but the more people learn how to do this, the less despair there is.
I like that. I mean, I would say what I see is we have to, there needs to be an awareness. We can't just pretend things are not happening, but don't feel that just because you're looking at the realities, that you're going to fall into the depth of the realities. Sometimes we need to see what is happening to then, like you say, make the choice. and it's for building ourselves as well, and especially when we're looking at the areas of ourselves that have the darkness as well, because especially when it comes to areas of spirituality that can try and just be love and light all the time and really not looking at our own dark areas, you know, and our own, people talk about shadow all the time, but it's important to at least address those or have an awareness of them and try to see the balance and see the benefit of what that's showing us, what we're not looking, so that we can be fully capable, fully integrated in those things, instead of just trying to love and light it away as well, because sometimes spirituality can give you, you know, a pill to kind of sit this out, but the shadow will follow you, and it's finding that balance of seeing it, knowing what it is, but like you say, choosing to not be in it all the time. And I think that's the new awareness that needs to that will help, is if you know that, be aware that there are these things, but you don't have to be in it 24/7 to be of any use. It's like knowledge, and then what are you going to do to be of light as a result of those things?
Yes, because obviously, yes, shadow, everybody has aspects of themselves that are functioning at the lower frequencies, but shadow is also the place that has high potency. So the way I look at it is, I'm expanding my energetic range in a way that I can experience very low frequency, very high frequency. And because like I have these energetic tools, I can choose how I respond to them. And yes, sometimes you do choose to go into a lower frequency. I mean, really relaxing in many ways is a lower frequency. So I look at it more like, instead of having a spectrum where you've got like 0 to 100, I'm looking at it more like a sphere, more like just how far can I expand and how far can I contract into my core. And this, it gives you a whole different way of, different dynamic, because now it's not cut and dried. There's subtleties, there's, yes, and if you don't have contrast, light is useless. So, of course, we want this light and dark, this play of light and dark. It's just, you get good at playing the game.
We've talked about so much, and I want to just round out with the things that you feel your work is helping with when it's coming to what we're trying to create in this new era of awareness, this new era of what it is to be human in this world. And how do you think you're speaking to that, and how can people work with you to be part of that?
I'm really focusing on working with women who are creating their own field. They've come to the top of whatever field they're currently in, whether it's in the spiritual realms, whether it's in business or whatever. And it's time to make things that are just ours, that's completely unique. So I'm showing these women how to create their own fields so that they can go off and offer people their work. And then those people, so I'm creating these ripples and doing it in a way that feels right for now and going forward. So, spiritually mature women who are energetically aware, who have business savvy, who have lived experience, have wisdom to share. So this is what I'm helping them do, is create their own field, their own method, their own methodology, and then share that with others. So it's a little bit of a, one person, two people, four people. It's very fractal. So that's where I feel my work is helping change things, because I'm working with women who are leaders, who will have people who work with them, and it goes exponentially. How you can work with me? Well, after this, I'm sure there will be things in the show notes. But I offer many different things, from my Substack, which anyone can come and read, my podcast. I do small one-off workshops. And then, of course, I do the one-to-one mentoring. And I always start with, I have a program called Center Yourself. And this is because when someone comes to work with me, that is the most important thing to begin with, is that centering. And from there, we can create. So, yeah, I work deeply. I only work with a few people at a time because I'm really invested in what we're doing together, energetically, emotionally, certainly intellectually. And I'm finding that they're experiencing things that they always wanted to experience, but they had never quite found it yet. They'd worked with different people and had little bits and pieces. But now, maybe it's because I come at it from so many different angles at the same time, they're walking away with the enhanced awareness of who they are, the energetic tools, the spiritual awareness, certainly their health always improves. And then, of course, their businesses, which they create these amazing companies that look and sound and feel like this 21st century. It is something that I've always done my whole life, is speaking to people and I can see their energetic threads. So sometimes that's what I do with someone, is just help them untangle some of their threads.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your work. And it's the time like this is so necessary. I'm very excited for the conversations that I'm having, the visions that women have as well, and also the desires as well. Even when I'm meeting new clients and new potential clients, the way that they speak about their desires are so different and so bold. They've got a bolder idea of what they'd like to do, and it's maybe just, how do we make this happen? And yeah, it's gonna kick butt and take names, I think. Going forward. So I'm looking forward to things for other people, things for myself, things for women like yourself.
Yes, this is the time. This is the time for us to be doing these things that, I was thinking the other day, this is the life I've been waiting for. I've had many others. This is the one where finally everything is coming together. I can use all of my skills, all of my abilities. And with the internet, it can go far.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is just so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed this immensely.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me, Elizabeth, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with somebody you feel will benefit from the wisdom of my guest, and also leave a review and a response and tell me what you enjoyed about this episode. If you want to find out more about me, you can find me at carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaewhittick.com. You can connect with me on Instagram, that's Casmic, CAZMICK, and on LinkedIn and Facebook, Carol May Whittick. Until next week and the next episode, have a great one. Thank you.